CloudDB, shaping your new normal.
Welcome everyone, wherever you are around the world, to the 2022 APEC OCI Days by Apaco UC. This is our first year having a dedicated OCI event, and it's our honor and privilege to run this event with the support of 15 Oracle user groups and Java user groups in the APEC region. Please remember to register to as many sessions as you can. This way you will be able to access our replays until June 15, 2022. Basically, you go to the agenda of the event, you register to the sessions you like. Anytime you can go to your attendee tab, your personal agenda, and you will see the replay buttons or links right there after 24 hours of the live session have happened. I would like to say once again, thank you to our Oracle user groups and Java user groups that made this event possible, and also to our sponsors, the Oracle ACE community, the DevRel team, and your main sponsors, Oracle Corporation and CloudDB. Now for today's session, comparing Oracle database performances in the cloud by Julian Dontcheff. Please feel free to ask questions to Julian at any moment by using the right lower chat window in the right lower section of the screen where the chat window is, and Julian will be answering all your questions at the end of his session. Also, if you have any questions or any problems during the presentation, please use the same chat window and I will try to help you the best I can. Now, without any more further ado, I want to leave you with this amazing session by Julian Dontcheff. Julian, the room is all yours.
Thank you very much, Francisco, and thank you very much for inviting me to present the APEC OCI Days. The presentation today will be, as you see on the slide, it will be comparing database performance in the cloud. And of course, majority of the presentation will be around comparing the performance as database, how fast it is, how slow it is. But I will start in the beginning also comparing the market share performance and also the business performance of the different databases in the cloud. Let me first introduce myself. I've been working with databases for more than 30 years. I work for Accenture. I lead globally the database group of Accenture, and I am both Oracle Certified Master and I'm Oracle ACE Director. I run a database blog on the internet. You can very easily find it. So let me start. And in case, as Francisco said, if you have any questions, you can either post them in the chat window and probably he can read them to me, or you can ask directly at the end of the Q&A. So according to Gartner, the estimate is that in about 3 years, 80% of companies will have their entire on-prem data centers to the cloud. So you see how the database cloud business is growing worldwide. Based on a report from last year, the database business worldwide is about a $65 billion business. It's the biggest software business in the world right now. And approximately half of it is, half of the 65 billion is database licenses, subscriptions, and related services. And the other half is database managed services like database outsourcing, database migration, so service business. And more than 90% of the money comes from the growth came from database platform as a service. You can split the database world into many different groups, but one very crucial one is the non-relational versus the relational one. And the non-relational segment grew much faster than the relational segment. The non-relational, so-called NoSQL segment grew by 34% compared to 15% for the relational market. However, if you think in terms of dollars, the non-relational segment is 3 times less in dollars than the relational one. So $3 of relational compared to $1 of non-relational. You can see how the biggest players last year were situated. Top one, Microsoft. And this is interesting because for the first time, Microsoft bypassed Oracle. Oracle was for a long time the number one market shareholder in the world. They had even at one point more than 40% of the market share. You see that they're quite equal. The difference is approximately only 500 million, about 16 billion for Microsoft and 15.5 for Oracle. However, in the relational database management market, Oracle is still number one, was last year number one. And the other players, of course, Amazon, IBM, and SAP, ranked 3, 4, and 5. If you think about Oracle, Oracle continued to grow, but only with 3%, and mostly driven growth by the cloud service revenue. Compared, however, to the other companies, their market share continued to decline. Microsoft, of course, they grew in double digits last year, 17%. Amazon grew by 41%, and Google most by 88%. So they are the highest. Google are the highest growing database vendor in terms of market share. If we in the top 10, if we exclude, of course, PostgreSQL, which is growing even faster. Even Alibaba bypassed Teradata and moved to number 7. What happened? Those are very new numbers. So what changed last month? The database market grew from 65 to 80 billion. So last year, the database market was 80 billion, which is a high increase of 22%. This is extremely high for software business compared to the 90% the previous year. And it is interesting to mention that, again, the database market is growing so fast that it doubled in 5 years. 5 years ago, the database market was around 40 billion. Now it's 80 billion. It's interesting also to note that Microsoft cloud revenue grew really high, 40% almost. And Amazon grows even faster, 42%. Google, again, even faster, 64%. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, Alibaba, they're even approaching the 2 billion mark. Here is cloud versus on-prem. And if you can see from 2017, the blue one is cloud, the orange one is on-prem. In 2017, the ratio between on-prem and cloud was 4 to 1, 5 to 1. As you can see now in 2021, they're almost equal. You see, half of the revenue, half of the business worldwide from databases now comes from databases in the cloud. Only half is on-prem. This is a stunning growth. And this is an interesting picture from Gartner. As you can see, the comparison of the top 5 players in the database market in the world in the last 5 years, Oracle dropped to number 3. They own now 20%, a little bit more than 20% of the global database market, while Amazon, AWS, took the 2nd position. And if you can see together, Microsoft and Amazon, they own almost half of the database market. Almost half, close to 50%. Google moved to number 4, and IBM dropped to number 5. You see, SAP is not any longer in the top 5. This is how the database market looks as of today. Microsoft number 1 with 24% market share, very much the same with Amazon, 0.1% less. Oracle, a little bit more than 20%, Google 6.5%, and IBM 5.6%. All right, that's about business, financials, and numbers. Now, a little bit more on the DBA topic, how the database performance of those databases differentiate between each other. Database performance, meaning performance of the database in terms of how fast the database is. And also the comparison, of course, what you pay for, financial investment versus performance of the database. What you see on the left side of the screen, 2 screenshots. The gray one on the top is the definition, is the documentation from the very first version of Oracle 2.3, which was commercially sold. Actually, there was a version 1.0. However, it was never sold commercially. This was the very first one. You see the name is still not Oracle here. It says RSI, Relational Software. And although many people think that still that Oracle is the first relational database, it is not entirely true. Oracle is the first commercially sold relational database. However, there was in the late 70s, there was a database called Multics, which was the first relational database in the world, but it was never sold commercially. So it disappeared in a few years. So Oracle is still the first and the only, the first commercially sold relational database. The screenshot on the bottom left, the black one, is from Oracle version 4. That's Oracle looked like when you started. We at Accenture started to compare first the performance of the autonomous database compared to OCI, and of course later on to other databases. The first tests were with ADW because it was the first autonomous database that was released by Oracle. Afterwards, of course, Oracle released ATP and also two other flavors of the database, the Apex one and the JSON one. So we compared the database to database, same Oracle database, but running on OCI. And if you can see here at the bottom line, 14 times performance acceleration, I have to explain what it means. We saw 1.6 performance improvement compared from autonomous compared to Oracle database running on OCI. But we did before tests which compared Oracle on OCI versus Oracle running on another cloud, major cloud, which was 8 times slower. Oracle was 8 times faster. So 8 times 1.6, approximately 14. That's how we come to the acceleration of the autonomous database. For those of you who are playing with inserting, deleting data, you can see that inserting 500 million rows in about 3 minutes in average is quite an improvement, quite a stunning fact. What we did is we decided to first compare manual install with database cloud service and with autonomous. And we compared the database provisioning on the left of the screen and the scale up down hardware on the right of the screen. So for manual install, of course, we assume that hardware is already procured. It takes around 4 hours. Of course, it depends very much on who does it, how fast he is, how skillful, and of course on the computer. But let's assume it's around 4 hours. This is what our test showed. The database cloud service, it took us about 1 hour to provision the database. And with an autonomous data warehouse, it took us 1.5 minutes, 101 seconds. For the scale up and down, the physical hardware, of course, not possible. For database cloud service, it took us half an hour, but the database was down while scaling was happening. And with autonomous, it took us a minute. And the good thing was that the database was active while scaling was happening. We decided to use a real application from Accenture called PRET, Platform Resource Enablement Tracking Tool, which runs on Oracle Analytics Cloud Service. So we decided to replicate the data to database cloud service and to autonomous. We wanted to have a real life application usage experience. And we decided to have 2 sprints. One's called the baseline and one's called extrapolate sprint. The first one was with only 3 months of data and real data, and the other one was with 9 years of data. So we were thinking first to have 9 months of data, but we decided let's put a lot of data and put 9 years of data. So comparing how autonomous database works compared to Oracle database on OCI with 3 months of data and 9 years of data. And the results were pretty equal. You see, the average runtime was 1.6, 1.7 times faster than standard Oracle database on OCI. Autonomous was much faster. And the interesting thing, probably what you can see from this slide is the database with 9 years of data was faster than the database with 3 months of data. All right. And then we decided to compare Oracle ADW with the major cloud data warehouse. So I'm not allowed to mention the name, but you probably guess there easily which database we're talking about. We decided to have the 3 different database sizes. One, a very small data warehouse, a mid-sized one, and a big data warehouse with a lot of data and a lot of concurrent sessions in the database. And we witnessed that in most of the cases, the small and the mid-sized one, they were rather equal. The databases did not show very big significant performance difference, but when it came to the heavy workloads on the large system, on the large data warehouse, then absolutely ADW was about twice faster than the other database. So if you think of performance cost ratio, definitely the one to consider is ADW. And here is a graphic. The blue one is Oracle, and the red one, you probably guess based on the color which one it is. It's a major cloud data warehouse. Those were the reports that we run. And you see, in average, Oracle was about twice faster than the other one. Here is a real client case. I want to show you how what you can really say from moving from Exadata to autonomous database. This is a real client. We built a business case for 1 year and then for the next 4 years, from year 2 to year 5. And as you can see, I won't go through all the numbers. You can just glance through them quickly. But for the first year, you have about 88% total cost of ownership. While for the years from year 2 to year 5, it's about 54% in average. So quite significant savings. And if you want to see how they come, probably from this slide, you can see graphically the difference between on-prem and Oracle Cloud. The left one, the one on the left is about cost comparison during the first year. And then on the right, you see from year 2 to year 5. And you can see from the different colors, probably not very well chosen colors because they're very much alike, but still you can see that a large saving comes from software and support, from hardware and support, even from storage, even from labor, a little bit, twice, probably less with autonomous. And then since autonomous has flavors and Exadata has different flavors on the cloud, we decided to compare the monthly cost of Exadata and autonomous. And we took 6 different options. We have autonomous dedicated. We have autonomous shared. So autonomous shared, we took one with 4 CPUs and only with 1 terabyte. And the other one is with 4 CPUs and 128 terabyte for bigger data warehouses. One which is dedicated with 44 CPUs, Exadata Cloud Service, quarter rack, Exadata Cloud Service half rack, and Exadata Cloud Service full rack. And of course, the 2 options you can have always with cloud is pay as you go, the lilac color, and flex with the blue color. If you look on the right side, the table shows the comparison between the different options. It gives you the CPU count, the storage, the scaling, the deployment, and of course the supported database versions. But in brief, here is the conclusion that we wrote a white paper about that. You can very easily Google and find the white paper, just Accenture.com, comparing monthly cost of Exadata and autonomous. You hit the PDF file. If you think of dedicated, autonomous dedicated, it is mostly appropriate if you want to run mission critical, business critical system in a secure isolation zone. If you need the HA platform, if you want to take all advantage of the Exadata performance, then ADB dedicated is the one for you. And we have seen it with clients moving to ADB dedicated for their big data warehousing solutions. If you think of the shared option, that's probably attractive for companies that want to move quickly to cloud. They don't want to bother in maintaining any infrastructure. They don't care much about the isolation, because with shared, you probably might have your pluggable databases in a container, or somebody noisy neighbor might be having a PDB in the same CDB. If you use the database for, say, development needs, you probably could have ADB shared as an option. And the third one is the Exadata Cloud Service Platform. It is, of course, very similar to dedicated. It offers isolation. It offers top high performance. It can handle business critical and mission critical workloads. It's a good option for companies that want to consolidate to cloud, consolidate multiple databases, and who need a highly available system. And one other benefit of Exadata Cloud Service that it works with Oracle standard applications such as EBS, Siebel, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, all that are not yet supported on autonomous. They mostly are supported now. I think the only one is eBusiness Suite, which is not yet supported on autonomous database. And here is an interesting comparison. This is how we compare Oracle Autonomous with a major cloud provider, but we compare also the price. So what you pay for based on the transaction you get. So we decided to provision a leading cloud provider with 16 virtual CPUs, which in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure has the equivalent of 8 Oracle CPUs. The third one is the Autonomous Data Warehouse with 8 CPUs as well. And we decided to have a similar memory. So, of course, with the leading cloud provider, we took 128 gigabytes of RAM. With Oracle, 120. For autonomous, you cannot choose the RAM. You cannot choose the memory. The memory comes based on the CPU. So with 8 CPUs, For one CPU, usually depending on which autonomous you take, it's around 10 gigabytes. So 8 Oracle CPUs would give you about 80 gigabytes. So very similar memory. You see the disk types, disk size. And at the end, we decided also to take another one, autonomous option with only 2 Oracle CPUs, to see how 2 Oracle CPUs will compare to 16 virtual CPUs in another cloud. All right. And here are the test results, the bottom line. In the leading cloud provider, we had 65 queries per hour. We managed to get in 1 hour. And also different reports, of course. With Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and Oracle Database running on it, more than 1,000. And look at Autonomous Database. With 8 Oracle CPUs, close to 12,000 queries per hour. And the smaller version of Autonomous, with 2 only CPUs, we had almost 2,500 queries per hour. So let's see how this compares in terms of money. So what you pay for one query. We decided to see how much you need to invest annually for infrastructure and the Oracle database cost. For database licensing cost, we included EE, Enterprise Edition with Advanced Security. So the term commitment in the leading cloud provider was 3 years. Same with the large autonomous data warehouse. You see the annual cost for the infrastructure in the leading cloud provider in OCI, the annual Oracle support, and the annual infrastructure plus Oracle DB support in both. So look at the both numbers. So 115K for the leading cloud provider, 64K for OCI, 101 for the larger setup of ADW, and 47K for the smaller one. And of course, you need to compare and compute what you pay for one query. Granted, you know how many queries you can run in 1 hour and how much your cost for 1 hour is. You can see the cost of one query. Look at row number 4, the both numbers. So the cost for Oracle database, for the cost of one query of an Oracle database in the leading cloud provider was about 20 cents. 20 cents. In OCI, half a cent. This is the second column. 1/10 of a cent for the larger configuration of Autonomous, and also about 1/5 of a cent for the smaller configuration. What actually you get from Autonomous is the real-time patching for security. While for OCI and for the leading cloud provider, it can take days, it can take weeks, it can take even months until you get to the latest patches, but it's real-time in ADW. So based on what we witness, the claim probably can be very simple. Oracle runs best on Oracle Cloud. And you can see our results on accenture.com/ADB or accenture.com/TVO. So this is all I had for today. I'm open to any question. Francisco, are there any questions on the line?
Hi, Julian. We have one question. What was the leading cloud provider in DBMS?
It was an Oracle database. An Oracle database.
Okay. Dirk is just writing. Let me check what he's doing.
Yes.
If anyone has any questions anymore, he's asking, is the RDS Oracle?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, Dirk. Now I can see the Sharad is writing something. Now looks like it decided not to write. But if anyone has any other questions for Julian, please feel free to write in the chat window. I will take a look in the Facebook side and see if there's anything on the Facebook streaming that I can see.
And you can also ask me a question on LinkedIn in case you cannot ask your question now. You can very easily find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can ask me a question there as well.
Fantastic. In that case, also, if anyone is watching the replay or want to do a question offline to Julian, you can do it via LinkedIn, as he just mentioned. Or if you cannot find him, just let me know, and I can also forward to him any questions that anyone have. Let me check. I can see a couple that is typing. Let me see if anything shows up. In the meantime, Julian, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and your time with the Oracle community in the Asia Pac and globally. And you always available, always keen to help and share your knowledge. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I see one last question from Dirk.
Yes,
Are there any plans to run similar benchmark for OLTP, ATP? Yes, we have done it. And we are now publishing a white paper on that. We're in the final phases of publishing the white paper. It's already done. The research, the white paper has been written. I'm waiting for marketing to release the white paper.
Fantastic. I can see a couple of people typing. Let's see if they were doing questions. Okay. What to choose between DBCS high availability and ATP database, and cost-wise, which is better?
Between DBCS high availability and ATP database, I would go for the ATP database. For cost, I cannot answer directly. It could be very much similar, things, right? Very much similar. But if you think of the better choice, I definitely will go for ATP.
Okay, I can see I have a few more people typing. Sharad said thanks. And looks like that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan.
Oh, we have a question just came. Robert just said, thanks for the presentation. I was interested in the technical changes, automated indexing, etc. So not really the webinar to choose in this case. Thanks, Drew.
Automatic indexes, yes. I have a separate presentation on automatic indexing, but this is totally different topic, yes.
Yep, no problem. All right. Thank you so much, Julian, again, for taking the time. Thank you so much, everyone. We're still having one more session today, and then we have 2 more days of sessions tomorrow and after tomorrow. And the replays of all today's sessions will be available by the end of the day tomorrow. Takes around 24 hours to all the replays to be available in the platform. Saying that, thank you so much, Julian. Thank you so much, everyone. And please take care and be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.